binary, one size doesn't fit all. We're going to be talking about image creation and management for the modern marketer today. And just some housekeeping to let you know, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type your questions in there in the GoToMeeting. And as well, we will be recording this. So if anyone at your company also you think needs to see this, this will be available for them to check out at a later date. That should be available sometime later today. All right. So I'm Travis Wright, and I will be one of the co-hosts today on this wonderful webinar. Here's a brief intro about me. Who am I? That's my illustrated version. So started out doing radio back at age 13, and at a country radio station, which was good times. Really enjoyed that. Lots and lots of country music. I was also a Russian linguist in the U.S. Army. So we can rest assured the Russians did not hack this webinar, though. So you rest easy on that. So I've been a marketer. I've been working in this space for quite a long time. And about 4 or 5 years ago, started working with the co-host of this at another startup, and really excited to introduce Robert Mosley. Robert, he is a very interesting guy as well. He's going to flip the switch over here. Robert flipping the switch. Boom. Robert Mosley, dude, check him out. He is rather mosaic in his appearance. Studied astrophysicist in the University of Minnesota, right? He speaks multiple languages as well. So him and we need to start speaking some Russian together, Robert. We need to.
Да, хорошо.
Очень хорошо. Неплохо. All right, good stuff. All right, so we are going to jump right in, and we're going to tell you guys today about how marketers can utilize image management effectively, because images are a big part of the web, right? The visual experience. And unfortunately, a lot of the web is, these images are way oversized. So I'm going to hand this off to Robert, and we're going to walk through and share with you some of these insights. Robert, welcome to the webinar, good sir.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Yeah, I mean, as you said, the vast majority of the web is actually images. Right now, as of 2017, it's actually roughly 65%. And that's mainly due to marketing, right? Everybody communicates, vision is our primary sense. So everybody communicates via images and videos and things like that. Everything, your emails, your display ads, your social media posts, your landing pages, even your home page, which is typically a marketing page, it's mostly imagery. That's how you get people's attention. And so this is kind of the primary focus of the internet today. As we kind of look at how things have grown from how it used to be to how it is today, in November 2011, the average size of images on any given page was 577 kilobytes. As of May 2015, this is a little outdated. It's 1.3 megabytes. So images have almost tripled in total bandwidth in the last 6 years. But our connection speeds, as most people are probably aware, have not exactly kept pace. So unless you're lucky like Travis and you have Google Fiber, it has actually caused some bandwidth issues, especially here in the United States, connections haven't kept pace.
That's true.
In fact, if we take a look at, if we take a look at May 2012, the average total page size was just north of 1 megabyte. In May 2015, the average size of images was actually 25% greater than that of the average web page in 2012. It's only in 3 years. So the image is becoming not only heavier in general, but all of that growth is essentially just due to images. Compounding this issue, of course, is just the different resolutions. I mean, in 2009, we didn't need to worry about responsive design. The vast majority of traffic came from 4 different screen resolutions. It's 70% of traffic came from these top 4 resolutions. And if you look at the top 5 here, almost 80% of all traffic came from desktop resolutions. And since there were desktop resolutions, they had much more reliable connections. Their screen sizes, they're all getting a similar experience. In fact, when you look at here, the only mobile resolution you see down here is this 320 by 396, and that represents less than 1% of traffic. So obviously in 2009, things like responsive design, and resizing your different images for different viewports and things like that was not even an issue. Life was
Yeah.
easy for web developers.
Surfing on an iPhone was challenging, though, to look at some of those web pages because they did not look very good.
yeah, yeah, they look terrible. Which is, remember, like just pinching and zooming in, and then clicking the link, and then zooming back out, and then pinching and zooming. Thank
You
God
still
those
have to
days
do
are
that on
over.
some pages today. Yeah, I don't think that's gone.
Yeah.
It's still just less of that, right?
But I mean, luckily we've figured that out. I mean, and just to kind of show that in 2017, so this is brand new, fresh data. The top four resolutions were only less than 42% traffic, which means that everything was varied. In fact, the largest share is this other thing, which means that this 22% is actually just an addition of several different resolutions that all each themselves are less than 1.8%. So this is crazy. We have to support thousands almost of different resolutions. And think about just your phone. You have a landscape, you turn it to portrait mode, you get a completely different layout. Right? That's makes it very difficult. And the top four are completely different. If we see the very top one is now the standard iPhone resolution, 360 by 640, then desktop, then another phone resolution, then desktop, then a tablet, then a phone. Right? It's all over the place, right? And then on top of that, if you think about what this means for connection speeds, if you take a look at this top one, they're probably just on the network. And in the United States, at least, a very large country, we don't all have great network, especially if you're on Sprint or T-Mobile and you're not in a major city. It's not a good connection. So that 65% of the weight of images can really harm your site performance, and we'll talk
Hey,
in a
now
little bit.
I have T-Mobile. They're okay, buddy. I have T-Mobile. It works all over the world. I don't be dogging on T-Mobile. I live in Kansas City. Sprint is here, so but I'm on T-Mobile. So you can dog on Sprint.
You come from the land. All right, I'll only make fun of Sprint from now on. But yeah, I mean, basically, it's these terrible internet connections compounded with the web developers having to try to develop these things that work for everyone. And not only that,
and how do you make an image that fits every one of these resolutions, right? I mean, in the old days, you literally had to have somebody there with Photoshop for hours cutting and cropping and changing for each one of those. So that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's kind of still how it works, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
As we've kind of moved towards responsive design, the web has become fluid. Like the layout of the pages adapt no matter what to whatever orientation, whatever screen size you're on, and that experience is really good. But you kind of have this 65% of your web page that is actually foreign. It's not So Travis, like what language is a web page written in?
HTML.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now what language is a JPEG image written in?
I do not know.
Exactly. What language is a PNG written in? So I mean,
no clue.
Basically, you have 65% of your web page that is this foreign material. It's these solid chunks that you can't control with HTML or JavaScript or CSS or anything like that. And we'll show a few examples, but nobody is doing images, right? Because they're an extremely difficult problem unless you have an army of people with Photoshop saving these things at different sizes and different formats and knowing everything about images. What is the right quality setting? What is the right format? What is the right size for all the different layouts for my responsive design, which could literally be infinite. How do you manage that? And this is also affecting the bottom line. If people think that I can design a web page that looks good on the iPhone, but I'm still asking them to download all this extra data and images that they can't even display. But that's not a good thing to do. This is every 1 second in additional page load time decreases conversion rate by 7%, which is very significant. This has been tested time and time again by multiple different very large organizations. In fact, Google found that when they slow down web page speed on google.com, the number of searches actually decreases by 10%. So just 100 milliseconds in difference. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And
And so a lot of times on these websites, you know, people are, it's responsive, but all they're doing is just shrinking the image in real time, right? So you're still downloading that 300 kilobyte image onto your phone, which is taking up your data, right? But you don't need that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So if you have, let's say that you build your web page and your largest breakpoint is 1920 wide, which is, a really nice screen, right? A really nice desktop screen, 1920 pixels wide. So you develop images that will fit that because you don't want to scale up a really small image that looks terrible. The quality is terrible. So what you do is you throw in the largest size image that you'll need, set max width to 100%, and then essentially it just scales the browser, the device has to scale that down. And so you're still downloading all the data required to show an image 1920 pixels wide, and you're squeezing into a size that might be 300 pixels or less. So and it's two-dimensional, so it's actually the square. It compounds. So it's not an efficient way of doing things. But in addition to the single second delay, impacting your bottom line to the tune of 7%, all that hard work you're putting into analytics and A/B testing and segmentation and personalization, will all be for naught if you do not do it efficiently. Let's say that you're running an A/B test and you're just swapping out an image. So you find a new image that you want to test and you upload it, but let's say that image isn't compressed correctly or it's not the right size. What would that do to the results of your test? If you're asking people to download all this extra data, you might find a false negative. If you would have put an optimal image in there in the first place, or an optimal video, it might have affected how people would have engaged. Maybe more people would have stuck around. And then on top of that, one of the most important factors in SEO ranking is the performance of your website. And we'll talk about this in a little bit as well. Making performance kind of a double whammy. Not only will people have a terrible experience when they get to your site or open your app, but they might not even be able to find you because Google's ranking your site so low that because your performance is terrible. And then just an example here, these are the top 8 fastest A/B testing tools. So if you're doing A/B testing, and this is just more of an illustration of how every single piece of marketing technology that we implement on our site also harms performance. So if we take something like A/B testing and personalization, we're actually starting behind. So if it takes a little over a second for a variation to be completed, that's 7% in conversions, right? So now we have to make all that up, and then we'll start seeing ROI. But would the personalization campaign have shown better results if we optimize the experience for page load time? Let's say we're running a video hero test. Would that have won if we would have delivered the video at the right resolution and codec? Especially with video, everybody would just throw up the HD video that they have and just assume that everybody can play it. If I'm on a mobile phone, why would deliver me an HD video that's 1920? My screen is only 360 pixels wide, so it makes 0 sense to show me a video of that. It's just extra pixels I can't display anyway.
Yeah, so a lot of websites, they have all these additional snippets of code on their site, all these big large images, right? And so it's drastically impacting their conversion rate, which for marketers, they're graded on that in a lot of ways, right? We want to have conversion. We're spending marketing and advertising dollars with people over here, but then we get to the IT section and it's got even if you have site spec on here, you're still at the second half it's going to take to load that. So there's a lot of challenges with this, and that's why the solution that Cloudinary offers is exciting stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, marketers aren't developers, right? So this stuff is usually not top of mind. I use this tool, I run my experiments, I target my audiences, I get the right message to the right person at the right time, and there's really not any thought that goes into how am I delivering that message? Am I doing that efficiently? I'm getting it to the right person, I'm getting the right message across, but am I doing it in a way that is actually harming myself? And I think that this is something that's kind of been a blind spot for marketers for years now, especially since all these digital marketing technologies have taken off. But it's not just you. I mean, and with such a well-studied and thorough understanding of the relationship between page load and conversion, you think that this would be more top of mind. And again, we'll talk about how we can fix this a little bit later in the presentation. But don't worry, it's not just you. Nobody's doing this right. I mean, if we look, this is a screenshot from Twitter. You can see this image that they're showing here. They're actually, the display width of this image is 504 pixels. But what they're doing is they're asking every single visitor to download an image that is 1200 pixels wide. I mean, this is 80% more pixels than they actually need, than they can actually display. So there's 80% of the data here is completely irrelevant. It can't even be displayed. The browser just kind of throws it out when it scales it down to the right size. Additionally, it's the wrong format. There's different more modern formats of images that can be used. It's the old standby of JPEG and PNG and even GIFs to a certain extent. But there's actually more modern formats. The issue here is that not every single browser supports these modern formats, but that can actually be fixed as well. And this is also the wrong quality settings. They're delivering this at a quality that is higher than the human eye can even perceive, which is, again, wasted data. You're encoding extra data into the image when you don't even need it, and it's not responsive. So this image doesn't scale down as you scale down the browser. Doesn't scale down as you open this in a different device. It's not responsive.
So what you're saying is Twitter gets this wrong too. They're getting all kinds of things wrong. What's up with that? They should fix this.
Yeah, and it's not just them. I mean, pretty much if you go to almost any site on the web. Yeah, and this is why, right? No, that's probably not why, but it could be. I mean, I've seen a lot worse, but I mean, Twitter is one of those examples where it's like, this is a huge tech company, one of the pillars
Absolutely.
of the tech community. A ton of people using their site every day. I'll spend 20 minutes on Twitter just scrolling through. How many images am I downloading in a single session? Probably hundreds.
If you actually look at your Twitter app
especially
settings,
from on a
your
mobile
cache,
device, what is
if you look at your settings and cache in your iPhone, and you see how big Twitter is, I mean, it can get up to like hundreds of megabytes large because it's caching all of that data, and it doesn't necessarily need to be caching these big files. So this is just one example of one really large company who you would think would have this correct or do it correctly, and they're not. So definitely you're not alone in this.
Yeah. But what would it look like if they did get it right? What would your experience on Twitter be if you did this right? So I just kind of ran this through Cloudinary and compressed it and delivered it at the right size and all that. And now you can see that it's the correct dimensions, 504 by 277, exactly the size it's being displayed at. It's a WebP image, and this is actually an interesting image format. It's developed by Google. It supports lossless, it supports lossy, so it has alpha transparency support. It actually even supports animation, so it can even replace animated GIFs. And it does it much more efficiently. And Google developed this format because there's a lot of parts of the world where delivering a JPEG image actually has negative ROI. So if I'm running a display ad in certain parts of the world, delivering a JPEG image because it's so heavy costs more than the expected return that I get from delivering that ad, which in Google is essentially just a big advertising company, so that they couldn't stand for that. But we also set this to the right quality settings. It's 100% responsive, so now these bitmap images adjust and are kind of fluid as the rest of the website and the rest of the web is. And it's 84.9% smaller. So you're only asking the visitor now to download 15 kilobytes versus 100 kilobytes. Right, so it's a huge, huge savings. So this is real world. And again, multiply this by the dozens or hundreds even of images that a single Twitter user will download in just one session. And you can see that Twitter could even eat up a significant percentage of your monthly bandwidth that your cell phone provider gives you.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the quality,
and then if we
to the eye, is not bad. It's not different. I mean, I'm looking at the image from before in this one. I don't see a discernible difference in quality of those images at all.
Yeah, and it's actually designed that way. So there's different things that you can do to an image to reduce the file size. So I mean, obviously we resized it here, and that's just removing pixels from the image, pixels that wouldn't be displayed anyway, which is going to reduce the size. But there's other things that you can do to an image to reduce the quality settings. without affecting the visual quality. So it's kind of like a visually lossless compression. It's not like Pied Piper where it's a true lossless compression, but it's somewhat similar. If your eye can't tell, then who cares?
Nice.
Um, one of the things that you can actually do is, so let's say this image is 504 kilobytes, or sorry, 504 pixels wide. There's actually a bunch of information in this image. There's the RGB channel, so there's the red information, the blue information, the green information, and basically you can combine those three colors and various weights to produce any color that the human eye can see, or almost any color that the human eye can see. Close enough. Then there's brightness information. The human eye has the rods in the human eye are way more sensitive than the cones in the human eye. So basically what that means is you see in grayscale much better than you do in color. You can see relative differences in brightnesses a lot better than you can see relative differences in colors, and your brain can actually be tricked by this. There's a lot of examples of different optical illusions that are pretty famous. I can pull up a couple of those in a little bit. But it's really interesting. Like, even though it's the same color, it looks completely different. So basically, one of the things that you can do is your eye is particularly bad at seeing blue. So this image is 504 kilobytes, but one of the things that you can do is scale the blue channel down to half the width. And then when you unpackage the JPEG to actually display it, you upscale it. So it's grainy, it looks bad, but your eye can't tell anyway because it's not very good at seeing blue. So that's called chroma subsampling. You can down sample the color information without your eye being able to tell. You can also do gamma correction. There's progressive versus non-progressive. So progressive image is one that shows up blurry at first, and then the data gets filled in as opposed to loading from top to bottom as kind of like a traditional image would. And there's various other tips and tricks that you can do to reduce image size without reducing quality. So anyways,
luckily, marketers don't have to do any of that because this solution does all of that for you, right? So this is just what is being done in the back end, right? So it's like, here's some of the science behind how it works and some of the recipe of how it works, but really, you don't even have to worry about that because it just works. It just does it for you automatically, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, these are things that most people don't know. I mean, unless you study images and image science and cognitive science almost, you're not going to know any of this stuff. But yeah, if you have a machine that does it for you, then you could just plug it in and use it, and the output is good. You don't know why, but it works, so that's good. So I mean, reducing file size by 85%, asking your visitors to download, 85% less data is obviously a good thing. We mentioned SEO earlier, right? This is I'm going to pick on these guys a little bit, mostly because I worked there for a while, and they were a client of mine when I was at Adobe. But so I know what they do very well. But basically, if we take a look at williamsonoma.com, and I'm going to pull up a live example here in just a minute. This is just kind of, this right thing over here is Google's page speed tool, the page speed insights. Running that through Williams Sonoma, they actually get a 9 out of 100. This is not good. And Travis, maybe you want to explain this part over here about their keywords and how this affects, how their keywords rank them in search engine optimization.
Certainly. Well, it's not a good thing when Google says your website is ridiculously slow, right? And if you go to the Page Speeds Insights, the platform, you just Google that and type in Williams Sonoma like that, you can actually see the difference between desktop and mobile. And so Google says 9 out of 100. And the number one thing you should do is you should optimize your images because look, there's 5 megabytes of images on williamsonoma.com. Now, that's impacting their ranking, right? So currently, if you've seen Williams Sonoma, it's an e-commerce, it's a retail store, they have all these different really cool products, right? And well, right now, they have 16,000 keywords that are on the first page. They just had 2,300 that just made it to the first page, and they just had 2,400 fall off of that first page. There are 11,000 that are ranking between 11 and 16 that could pop to that front page, right? Potentially millions and millions of dollars of revenue if those pages become ranked for Williams Sonoma, right? And they have 60,000, different keywords and pages that are ranking from pages 2 to 5. So we're under the belief that if Williams Sonoma were to optimize their images on their platform, their page speed is going to increase, which is one of the three most important pillars of Google for their ranking currently, right? And so you got to have fast load time on your website, and they're not doing that, and so it's hurting them in a big way. And if you are in a similar scenario, it could be impacting you in a similar way and costing you potentially millions of dollars in potential revenue.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where kind of image performance becomes that double whammy. I mean, marketers basically have two jobs. It's to build awareness, or you can think of that as driving more traffic to your website. So how do I get more people in the door? And then once they're in the door, how do I get them to buy more? Or how do I increase my revenue per visitor if you're a retailer, for instance? Similar metrics for even media companies. And once they're in the door, how do I get them to view more pages? That essentially equals more ad views, which equals more revenue. So this
plus
is something that everybody needs to do.
Keep Google happy. That's the third one. That's got to keep them happy.
Yeah. I mean, if you keep Google happy, they'll keep pushing people into your door, you know. And once they're there, then it's up to you. But so you have to have an optimized site for both those reasons: for optimizing getting people in the door, and then optimizing their experience once they're there. So this is very important. I'm actually going to jump over into the browser right now. So this is a live demonstration. These things can go wrong here and there. So let's bear with me if anything goes wrong. Can you still see my screen here, Travis?
Yes, sir. I can see your screen. Okay, cool. Welcome to Williams-Sonoma.
So I did pull up williamssonoma.com. Yeah. They are a higher end retailer, right? So their experiences, their delivery, they make, I can't even talk right now. They make high quality products, right? And they want to show that off with very high quality images. So you have this beautiful image right here, a lot of colors, really good presentation. You know, makes me want these plates. They look really cool. So let's actually investigate this image and let's see what's going on here. So I opened it up in a new tab. You can see here it's being delivered from Williams-Sonoma. Let's look at info here. This image alone is almost an entire megabyte. So 934 kilobytes. It's 1,200 pixels wide, which is probably what it's being displayed. Yeah, it's massive. Let's see what it's being displayed at as far as size go. And so it's being displayed at the right size, so they got that right. But let's see what we can do if we do some of those tricks that I was talking about earlier around compressing an image without just changing its size. So I'm going to run this through Cloudinary. So I'm going to run the auto quality and the auto format algorithms in here. And then Cloudinary is also going to determine what the best, whether lossy or lossless would be the best. So here it is, compressed. So just to show you, here's the original, here's compressed. Visually, there's zero difference. The only difference here is that visitors who use this image would only download 245 kilobytes of information as opposed to a megabyte, so 75% smaller for the exact same image. It's the same visual quality, it's the same size. It is literally the exact experience, except it's
literally 700 kilobytes
and then for those visitors in
information
Chrome,
that they don't need.
And that's just one image, right? It's just one image. They have dozens of images that are of similar size that are just as bad. So if you do that, sometimes we'll switch when the user's in Chrome to a WebP image. In this particular image, we probably found that we could compress JPEG beyond WebP. So it just shows up as a JPEG. But let's take a look at another example. So here we have TechCrunch. You know, if you're in the here, one of the more popular websites and blogs that you'll read. This image, just this top one, this was the main article on the homepage. This is similar, right? 2/3 of a megabyte, very large. They're actually delivering us at double dimension, so there's a reason to do this. And that reason would be for Retina screens and the like. I'm not sure if they tested into that or found if that is actually better, but which I would always recommend testing. It's a good idea. So if we take a look at this image again, this is the original, so this is a little bit bigger. But let's take this 1 megabyte version. Let's try to compress this one, see what we get, see what we can do for TechCrunch here. Yeah, so 200 kilobytes, right? So 1 megabyte to 200 kilobytes. So this is an 80% difference. Same, again, same exact visual experience. And then let's see what Twitter's doing right now. Let's just take, I'm not sure who this guy is, but look what size his face is delivered at. So they delivered an image that's 780 pixels wide and displaying it at 504. And if we scroll, see what this one is. Oops, that one's not, that's probably a video. This one, that's also, I have to click on, this one will work. So here's another image. And this one is 959 pixels wide, scaled to 504. And Twitter represents an interesting problem because it's user-generated content. So they can't control what people upload. And most of this is uploaded from their users. So it's their users' devices, their users' phones, their computers. They can't control the quality settings that it's uploaded as. They can't control the format it's uploaded as. They can't control the size it's uploaded as. So they have to do something. How do you standardize across all these different devices and upload sources?
When you're
let's
talking
take a
about
look at
sites
some of these.
like TechCrunch and Twitter, they're spending millions and millions of additional dollars, most likely, on their bandwidth and hosting because they're showing all this extra imagery that they don't need to. So that's just a whole other component to factor in. If you're one of these big sites that has a ton of traffic and you're showing images that are 75, 80% larger than they need to be, how much money are you wasting by doing that practice? That seems huge.
Yeah, and that's another side of the equation that you have to account for that we haven't even talked about. Well, how much do you pay in bandwidth? It's not free to transfer all this data. It's companies like Akamai and Fastly and Amazon that have CDNs to deliver this information, and they're not in the business of things out for free. Same thing with storage, right? You need to store these images somewhere. That costs money as well. Let's take a look at somebody who's doing it right, like AMC Theaters, and oddly enough, they are a Cloudinary customer. So let's, oops, I didn't mean to click on that. Let's go back. No, you can't know my location. So this is one of those moments where I was talking about where a live presentation doesn't always go according to plan. So AMC is interesting. So they actually have a React site. So they have the ability to actually find the size that's available for each image via their React library. And then as you can see here in the code, if you guys know code at all, you can see that they're just requesting the image with auto quality, auto format, with the right height and the right width, and they're cropping it accordingly. And these images are optimized for bandwidth delivery. If we take a look at this image, we can see that's 10 kilobytes. That's tiny. Like that's nothing. I mean, typically images this size will be like 40, 50. Yeah, so I mean, they're offering their customers a good experience. So we've been talking a lot about optimizing for bandwidth, right? And this is obviously very important for different things. I mentioned this earlier. This is actually a quote from Jai Krishnan. He's actually product manager for that WebP image format at Google. And he said in some regions of the world, the bandwidth cost of delivering image ads exceeds the return. So think places like most of Africa, the Middle East, and even India and Indonesia. And then there's even less regions of the world where video ads have a positive ROI. Obviously, videos are three-dimensional. They have a width, a height, and a time dimension. So they're way more data included in the video. And they also, actually, there's even a fourth dimension. There's the audio as well. So those are even heavier. So there's even less areas. So it almost makes it impossible for marketers to do their jobs. But as you kind of saw there on AMC, this is how it's done. Basically, there's a programming interface language for images now that can be accessed via HTML and JavaScript. So instead of images now being these foreign bits of information that are present in your website and application, now they're accessible and they're editable via any language that you want. Anything that can edit a string, which is Java, which is JavaScript, which is anything, Ruby, Node, anything else. And so basically you upload the images to the cloud, you just request whatever version of you want of that, and then it's automatically delivered globally via CDN. So it's very, very easy to do. And so now that we have things optimized, what are some of the other things that we can do? There's actually another side of optimization that marketers would probably be more familiar with. So there's the optimization that we've been talking about, which is delivering the optimal experience by delivering the image at the smallest file size possible while giving a good experience. Then there's also the marketing optimization. So how do I deliver the right message? If all my messages are images, that actually leads to bottlenecks, right? Because image creation is a highly, highly manual process. So let's take personalization, for example. As we all know, personalization is the right person plus the right message. And there's a lot of different ways where you can find out who the right person is. This has been solved for years. There's DMPs, there's optimization tools, and even tag management tools that offer the ability to track and build actionable profiles of your visitors. And so you can build these campaigns and you can find the right audience and the right people that you want to target, but you still have this problem, this bottleneck of creating the content. So if you have a million different visitors who are all unique individuals, obviously you can't target a million different people. You have to hire an army to do that. And I'll actually show a live example from William Sonoma here in a second as well. But you would need to hire people with Photoshop to actually create the imagery and then pump that into your campaign somehow. Building the audiences, like I said, is easy, but building the content is not easy. And this is actually referred to as the content dilemma, where the amount of content that you can create is the limiting factor in the marketing campaigns that you can actually execute. So if we take a look at William Sonoma again, I continue picking on them. This is a real world example. So they have this section of their website, if you scroll down a little bit, called Just For You. And what Just For You is, it's actually category affinity. So as you browse, Williams Sonoma, they have thousands and thousands of products, and they have thousands of different categories of products. So the default scenario here that Just For You will show is gifts from the gifts category, the new category, so they want to show you their new products, and things on sale. And this was all done via analytics. They found that new visitors tend to like these sorts of products that fall into this category. But if you start browsing around on their site, for instance, I browsed over to these very nice steak knives over on Williams Sonoma. Now they know a little bit about me. They know what I'm looking for. And what they actually do is they then change that section on the homepage. Instead of showing gifts, new, and sale, now I get relevant content. Now I get knife sets and shunned cutlery and sale. And so this is called category affinity. And this is really cool. It's actually boosted their conversion, boosted their RPV, and this is a pretty standard sort of behavioral personalization that some companies will do. But one thing that you'll notice is that it still isn't highly relevant to me. I was looking at Wusthof gourmet steak knives. I wasn't looking at knife sets, and I wasn't looking at shunned cutlery. I had a very specific type of cutlery that I was looking at. But they didn't show me that. So while this is somewhat relevant, a little bit more relevant, it's still not what I was looking for. So why not just show me what I was looking at? Well, if we kind of dig into the problem, let's just take a look at how they organize their products, for instance. They have about a dozen or so, I think it's actually 11 different categories of products on williamsonoma.com. Each category has at least 20 subcategories. So you hover over cookware, this is the drop down you get, and this is crazy. You can see how many subcategories of cookware that they have here. And then each subcategory can have hundreds of products. Just in cookware sets, which is a subcategory of cookware, there's 148 different products. So while Williams Sonoma can manage the content creation for 11 top categories, right? So if I click anywhere in the cookware category, I'm going to get the category affinity experience for cookware. If I click anywhere in the cutlery category, I'll then get that category. That's easy. They only have to maintain 11 different variations of that section on the homepage. But as they drill down, you can see that this just becomes exponentially more and more difficult to maintain. So if we actually take a look at the math, it's pretty easy to visualize the amount of time it would take to create 11 images for each category, perhaps a few hours, maybe a day in Photoshop to create these, and then we're kind of good to go. But what would it take for Williams Sonoma to do true personalization at the product level? So this is actually one big image, right? So if we actually look at the code here, this is one big image. There's 3 personalized areas on this image, right here, and right here. So let's assume they have 1,000 products, which is a bit of an underestimate, but it's generally in the range of the number of products that they have. That means that there's 10 to the, or 1,000 to the third potential versions of this image. It isn't quite right. It's 1,000 times 999 times 998, but this is close enough. Which means that there's actually 1 billion image variations that they would have to create to do product level personalization, which is a lot.
1 billion, and that's with only 1,000 products, and they have thousands of products, right?
Yeah, and it just gets exponentially worse from there on. And then what happens if you do a redesign? What happens if you do branding standards updates? But let's actually take this math a little further. 1 billion images. Let's say that each image takes 1 minute in Photoshop to create, like you're a wizard. It would actually take 1,902 years and 7 months to manually create these images if you did it without breaks. So no breaks, you're a machine, you don't need to sleep, you don't need to eat, you take no breaks. You would have started in the year 114, which is which would have been if you were well, if you were a Parthian, you actually would have been overran by Emperor Trajan that year. So it's you'd be very old. You would have a very long beard, longer than you have right now. Alternatively, you could hire 7,992 full-time employees to get this done in 1 year. 40 hours. This math is assuming they're not working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but 40 hours a week. But they don't get vacations or holidays because you're a terrible boss. And then let's assume each one of these 7,992 full-time employees costs $50,000 in salary per year, including benefits and all that, so you don't pay them that well either. This would cost about $400 million in a single year to scale personalization to the product level, which is why you don't see anybody doing it. It's just very, very hard to do. And in addition, this is what the section looks like now, but just a couple short months ago, this is what it used to look like. So this is a $400 million design update, if they did it to the level that we're discussing here. So obviously, doing this manually isn't going to work. There's just not enough resources. You don't have the money. The return on investment just isn't there. It's there for doing it at the category level. Obviously, the results would be better if you got more and more specific and did better personalization, but there's a trade-off. There's a point at which the effort you put in outweighs the return you get back. So what could you do, right? And so this is one of the other cool things about Cloudinary. Since we can dynamically manipulate images, resize them, we can overlay text, we can do all sorts of different crazy effects and things like that. And there's also the ability to collect data. We already discussed that that's already out there. If you have a tag manager or an A/B testing tool or a DMP, or even if you just want to include a small snippet of JavaScript on the page, it's very easy to collect data about behavior and store it in their browser in a cookie or local storage. But basically, let's see how this could be done and to all Boolean variations with Cloudinary. So basically, we need a template, right? So this image is 480 pixels wide, 480 pixels tall, and then there's a 50 pixel area of white space here where they overlay the text, right? Then they combine these into an image, which is easy to do. So there's only really 3 different things that we need to track. The last product image that they viewed from the last product page that they viewed. So using our tag manager or A/B testing tool, we simply save that URL in a cookie, for instance, add it to the data layer. We need to save the last product name. Same idea, right? We're saving, when they view a product page, we write in the last product name that they viewed into a cookie or into local storage, save it in the data layer. Then we just need the last product URL, same deal. And then we have the code here where we can pop a completely dynamic image that will link to the right page. and then Cloudinary will generate the right image. So the last product image goes here, the last product name goes here. You can change the text, you can change the layout, where the text goes. You can even upload your own font files if you have custom font files, choose the size, the shadow, the stroke, all that good stuff that you can do in Photoshop can actually be done through this programmatic URL language, and there's even a builder, a kind of a WYSIWYG editor to help you do this. But basically what you get now is you get this one single image URL, which is completely dynamic based on the user's behavior. And so now you can create a billion images, and it takes you about 5 minutes to build this URL, and then the machine does the rest.
What about those 7,000 employees that we were going to have to spend all that money on? They're out of job now.
Yeah, man, I don't know. They'll have to find other work.
They have to reskill themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't have people building things like covered wagons and stuff anymore, so the economy always adjusts.
That's true. That is true. That's impressive, though.
And so this is just one.
Literally take that on the fly, pull that other image out that you've already viewed, and then be able to overlay the text at the bottom, automatically. I mean, that is such a time saver, and it's phenomenal. And you know that every image, when it gets populated in there, is going to be the ideal size. So it's going to be as small as it needs to be and efficient. So, yeah, it's great.
Yep. So this is taking advantage of both ends of optimization. It's delivering the optimal format and size. So you can see we have Q auto in here, which is auto quality, and F auto, which is auto format. So optimal quality, optimal format, it's the correct size, it's everything, right? So it's optimized for delivery, so their user experience is going to be great, and they're getting a highly relevant experience, much more relevant than you could possibly do manually. So it's the standard progression of human technology. How do we take things that used to be extremely manual intensive labor and mechanize them? And this is just a way of doing that. And another really cool test that you can run, and I want to move on here because I do want to leave a few minutes for questions at the end. Another really cool test you can run is just studying image quality versus conversion rates. If you're familiar with economics at all, there's a principle called the Laffer curve, which is the government tax rate. As they raise that, there becomes a point in which the revenue actually decreases as the burden of the additional burden of the additional tax rate actually harms economic productivity. So of course, politicians don't take any of this into account when they make laws, because why would they? But you can apply this principle, and you should take it into account for your website. There's actually a marketing equivalent of this that I have coined the laughable curve, which is image quality versus revenue. So the lower the image quality, obviously the faster it's going to load, the smaller the size of the image is going to be. But if you lower image quality too far, your site looks laughable, and people don't trust it, and they'll leave. And so there actually is an optimal image quality setting for your site, and nobody tests this. This is crazy, because this is something that would be a perfect A/B test. And it doesn't even start with a hypothesis. It starts with a well-studied theory that the amount of information you have to download and conversion have a very, very strong, not even correlative, but causative relationship. So it's very easy to test with something like Cloudinary, because you can just put the quality setting right in the URL of the image, and we'll generate these for you. You don't have to go into Photoshop and save these at various different qualities and then try to figure out how to switch that with your A/B testing tool. And just add a parameter right to the image URL here, and you can test that out. And you can even segment and find out which segments prefer low quality, which segments prefer high quality, maybe even DPR, double resolution images, and scale that out and deliver it to them going forward once you find a winner. And that's another big problem with A/B testing, is you find winners, and then how do you scale that out going forward, especially if there's different segments that like different things. It's kind of the same problem that we were talking about earlier, slightly different, but you end up with websites that you actually have, your homepage might be dozens of different homepages depending upon who the visitor is, and how do you maintain and scale that. And then the last kind of case study here, the last kind of idea, is actually in display ads. So here's a Williams Sonoma display ad I came across, and same thing for email, right? So the whole idea is you try to get their attention with an image. So you've used the DMPs, you've used the things like Marketo out there to find your audience. Now you want to deliver them an email. get their attention, have them click through, hopefully. And so what can we do here? If an ad consists of three parts. There's usually the background image, and all ads are usually images or videos. There is the branding. So this is typically either text or a logo, another image. And then there's a call to action, right? So there's, click here or shop agrarian, as in this case. So it's the same scaling problem. If you notice, it's almost the exact same personalization problem that we were running into before, except this time applied to display ads and email optimization. So there's a ton of different things that you can do with an ad or an email image. You want to get their attention, first of all, and you want to make sure the content is relevant. So we kind of showed with the previous example how you can build relevant content and scale it to a level that you couldn't do manually. But how do you get their attention? So we can actually test different things, even like saturation. So if we look at this image over here, what does it look like if we just up the saturation? So now the colors pop out a bit more. Let me test. Let me see, does this end up in more clicks? The exact same image, but just the saturation adjusted. We can adjust the contrast as well. What does this do? And there's even crazy things that you can do, and obviously I wouldn't recommend Williams-Sonoma actually do this, but what if we made this Williams-Sonoma ad take on the style of this impressionist piece of art? Would it appeal to the more sophisticated side of our ad viewers?
Very sophisticated.
Very sophisticated, yeah. Impression. A high-minded taste. But there's lots of other things that you can do, right? So rotate images, flip, change the shape, round the corners. There's photo effects and filters. You can combine these in any sort of way that you want. Text overlays, watermarks, image overlays, custom shaping, and there's hundreds of more different things that you can do. So basically, the whole idea here is that we're taking these images, we're optimizing them for delivery, we're optimizing them for content at a scale that could never be done before, and we're putting that tool set in the hands of a marketer so they can do their jobs more efficiently. And marketers live happily ever after, I hope.
Yay, nicely done, Robert. All right, great stuff. So if we have any questions, we have about 8 minutes until the top of the hour. So if you have any questions, feel free to type those in, and we will answer those. And very fascinating stuff. So the flexibility and just the efficiency that you have by utilizing the solution here by Cloudinary is going to make your website run faster. It's going to allow your website your website visitors to not download as much information. It gives you all kinds of ability to be creative and do things on the fly that would cost millions of dollars and having to hire people to do. So so many wins on so many levels on this. And maybe you're a marketer and you're thinking, well, wow, I'm a marketer. I can't necessarily do all of this. Well, you know what? Introduce your developer and have a conversation with them around that, because if they can implement this solution, they're going to increase conversions and be more effective online, make more money, right? So that's bottom line, is what the companies are caring about, is making more money, having a faster website, having a more proficient way of delivering these images, cutting down your website time, and then being able to personalize in a whole new level. I mean, seriously, that's some awesome stuff there, sir. Good stuff, Robert.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, any questions, or we will just give you a few minutes back?
Give you a few minutes back. Do not see any questions coming through right now. We have a ton of attendees on. We want to thank you all for joining us today. If you have more questions, where can people connect with Cloudinary to ask more questions, Robert?
Yeah, so on cloudinary.com, there is a contact us form, and we will be happy to answer that. You can also actually reach out to me directly if you choose, robert@cloudinary.com. Pretty easy. I'm on the developer side, so everything from tech questions to marketing questions. I worked in the marketing space for a very, very long time, marketing technology at Adobe and a couple other startups. But yeah, if you want to see how this works and try to implement a couple campaigns, be happy to help out.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some questions coming through here, Robert. Is there a possibility in Cloudinary to automatically circulate a set of images and find which one has the highest click-through rate?
Yeah, there is. So basically, there's a lot of really cool information that you can surface at the page level. So all the information about the image, like what image version was this, all the settings about the image. We can actually even algorithmically determine what the contents of the image is, right? So you already have a tool to do things like that, your analytics tool, Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, Web Trends, Core Metrics, etc. And so we've made everything really, really easy to just add the image information to the data layer. So you can just pass that information right to your analytics tool and view your reports right there. And this is actually one thing that I should have brought up earlier, is that when you speed up your web page, most of the time your analytics tags fire at the very end of the web page once it's done loading, which means that you'll only actually get metrics on people who sat and waited for the entire page to download. So just by speeding things up, you'll also actually get much better analytics information because you'll capture those people that might have left before the analytics tag would have fired off before.
That's beautiful. Good stuff. And we got a question in here about a free trial or sandbox, and that is available on cloudinary.com. Just click on there's a free trial place, and you can actually get your own.
It's actually not even a trial. It's actually just a free account. So it's not time limited in any way. Yeah, it's just a free account that you can use forever, as long as you stay below the bandwidth and storage criteria.
Absolutely. And then we had another question here as well around link to the slides. I believe we'll probably upload this to SlideShare, I would assume, or somewhere. And there's also going to be a link that we can send out, because there's a couple of people who've asked questions of where can we find a link to replay to our colleagues. So everybody who attended the webinar today, we will send you out a replay link via email so that you can send it to your colleagues so they can take a look at that. We have another couple questions here. One from Anne is, can you serve images via HTTP2?
Yeah, so actually everything that comes out of Cloudinary is automatically delivered via HTTP2. So the days of sprites are over. HTTP2 versus HTTP 1.1. Basically, the big difference there is the concurrent connection limit. So if you have a ton of different images on your page, delivering them at HTTP 1.1, once you get beyond 7 images, they kind of happen synchronously. It has to wait until an image finishes. Then it'll go to the next one, then to the next one. In HTTP 2, there's no concurrent limit. It's just like a big open pipe that things can flow through. So everything through Cloudinary is automatically delivered via HTTP 2.
Nice. We got another question here from Martin. He asked, other than WebP, what other formats do you recommend?
Yeah, so there's the JPEG XR format, which Microsoft developed, only supported in Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, and Windows Phone, which isn't a huge consideration. But there's that format. There's also the JPEG 2000 format, which is only supported by Safari. There's alternatives to animated GIFs as well. So the animated WebP I talked about, only supported by Chrome and Opera, but there's actually a format called animated PNG, which is a branch of the PNG format that supports animation, much smaller than animated GIF, which is actually 30 years old and hadn't been updated since. But that's only supported by Firefox, and I think Safari just added support for animated PNG. So yeah, there's a few other formats out there.
Yeah, what's great about Cloudinary is it actually will choose the best format based on which browser and which device you're on, right? So in a lot of ways, you don't even have to think about that because it's going to auto-format that for you, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
We got one final question here from the one and only Chris Zakharoff. How does dynamic images affect caching and SEO?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, the more images that you create, it will lower the cache rate, right? If you're delivering one standard image, it's going to be cached, and everybody will download that image. As you get multiple variations, the cache rate will be lower, right? So let's say for responsive images, I have everything from 1920 pixels wide all the way down to 300 pixels wide. You don't want to deliver an image at every single pixel. Otherwise, you're going to have 1,620 different images, and almost none of those will be cached for any length of time. So none of them will be delivered from CDN. And at a certain point, again, you have to weigh the benefits. So at some point, you're delivering more images and will be cached. You're actually harming yourself. So what we've actually done is we've developed an algorithm to choose what is the best interval to create these images at. So from 300 to 1920, we might do it at 20 kilobyte steps as opposed to every single pixel. And it makes more sense to do it at a kilobyte step because now we're optimizing for bandwidth. We're not creating too many images. Cache rate is still, above 90%, which is the industry standard. So that's the way we handle that.
Good stuff. And our good friend Josh Lipkin, he says, "What's up? Great webinar." So shout out to Josh Lipkin. Thank you for joining. All right, so we are now at the top of the hour. Want to thank everyone for jumping on and joining us today and learning about how image optimization can really impact the marketer and why it's so important to do that. So thank you so much. Again, Robert, thank you for your excellent expertise on this. That was great. And if you guys have any questions on this, feel free to reach out to Cloudinary. And again, this will be emailed out and available. The video replay will be available later on in the day. All right. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.